Welcome to episode 129 of the Hard Truth About B2B e-commerce. I'm your co-host Isaiah Bollinger. Unfortunately, without Tim for the day, but he should be back on our next episode, and we'll be obviously chiming in the way he always does. So, with that being said, let's do a quick pause for our sponsors, and we'll be right back.
Balance is a B2B e-commerce payment solution that works well for you and for your buyers. It offers a seamless one-click checkout for almost any payment method, including ACH, wire, checks, cards, even terms. It's used by leaders in B2B e-commerce, and it's as easy as buying a shirt from Amazon. Check them out at getbalance.com. Book a session and tell them what your needs are. They are the first dedicated payment platform for B2B e-commerce, 100% tailored to your needs. Thanks again to our sponsor, Balance.
And I'm excited to introduce Dave Malda, who is a longtime e-commerce integration, B2B expert, however you want to kind of phrase it. I guess in my mind, kind of the face of Jitterbit online, just because I see you on LinkedIn and whatnot. But I would love to hear your explanation of how you describe yourself.
Sure. Yeah. No, thanks, Isaiah. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I think, my name's Dave Malda. I'm the director of partnerships at Jitterbit. And I've been in the space for probably, 15 or 16 years, started in EDI. And then I would say after 3 or 4 years, e-commerce really started to kind of pick up and gain some momentum. I wouldn't say it suppressed EDI, but certainly e-commerce integrations became more and more popular. So, that's what I've been doing for probably the last 15 or 16 years, but really enjoy it. Have seen a lot of folks, including yourself, like at shows and just at different events throughout the industry. And one thing that I just really love about it is that every day truly is different. There are different challenges, different ways to help businesses. And I think that's what makes it so exciting, even after, 15 or 16 years. So thanks again, Isaiah, for inviting me on here. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for joining. And I've always enjoyed your content and just, you putting yourself out there in the industry. So, this is definitely someone I wanted to have on the podcast. And then I finally got to meet you in person, which was obviously just kind of a little bit by chance at Sweet World, the NetSuite conference. So
yeah, it's funny how and I would say likewise to you. We have done sort of things with Trellis over the years, and if there was complex integrations, we would always be chatting at the very least, and it was funny just to finally meet up because I follow you as well. And what I love about your content is it's short, it's sweet, but it always has a little bit of an edge to it where there's a question or it's like, oh, okay, that makes me think. It's never long-winded. It's always pretty to the point.
Yeah.
And a little edge to it, which I love. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna try and be doing some more long form content. I might get back more to just basic blogging in the next year or so, but it's hard to kind of balance all these things and find time for everything. And maybe I'll
absolutely
get value out of some AI tools to speed that up. So we'll see. But I think to your point originally, it's always changing, right? That's part of what I love about B2B commerce is so complicated, and we're starting to kind of think about it in a broader spectrum of you have B2B at the core, but then you may have a B2C channel, you might have marketplaces, you might have some sort of in-store, component. And so, I guess the buzzword is omni-channel, which I feel is, I don't know, it doesn't really resonate, but it is, I think that's where the complexity is. And that's what I personally feel pretty strongly that just purely being D2C is tough. I mean, if you think about like the successful businesses out there, and even the ones that have tried to go pure D2C, they've struggled, right? Like
Yeah.
we saw it with was it Casper mattress company? Like there's a handful of these where like they can't really scale that profitably. The acquisition costs are really high. I think D2C is still a great channel. Don't get me wrong. But if you think about a lot of the more successful businesses that scale and sustain themselves, they have a mix of B2B and B2C, and B2B is a big piece of their business because it's, I mean, it's such a massive channel, right?
Yeah,
And so,
it's kind
yeah.
of interesting. Like what I've noticed, Isaiah, and I think you've probably noticed this too, is like, and people have said this. I know Harley at Shopify has said this. I've heard others say it. The folks at BigCommerce say it. It's like it's kind of like wherever your customer is going to be or wherever they want to buy, that's where you need to be. And that's kind of what drives a lot of this, right? And then to have clunky or maybe even manual processes to sort of make this experience really great for the customer, it just people won't put up with it, right? Like there is an expectation. I think Amazon set the bar for you order something, it is actually so easy. And then
Two
it's like,
days. I mean, sometimes literally next
wild,
day. I mean,
right?
sometimes it's next day now. It's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like a little different now, I noticed, where it's like could be next day, could be two, like, but it's still like
Yeah. But like the process is so like you kind of get, you're never waiting for an update. I did notice, like I got something yesterday and it said it should arrive in between 1:30 and 3:45 or something. Like there was a little time range and I was like, oh, that is
not
so,
only is it next day, it's like now you got
yeah. It's like yesterday
time,
said like
you
this
got the window.
afternoon.
But that's a good point is I think that's why D2C is so hard because you're competing against that, right? And so
Yes.
I think the D2C component, you have to be really strategic to have a value prop as to how you're going to do that. We have actually a surprise for you guys here. I thought Tim wasn't going to make it. He's actually going to, we've never done this before, so this will be Dave. We're gonna give him one sec. He's loading. Tim,
I love it.
are you loading?
Hey, Tim,
Hey, how you doing?
doing well. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Sorry I got my wires crossed. I looked at my calendar and I didn't see it today. I thought, oh, we canceled today. My fault.
It's also, I mean, it's been a mess to be honest, and that's a lot on me. Like I've had to cancel last minute. The summer was like really messy with vacation, and then we had guests cancel, and we've been off our game on scheduling, but
It's
Juggling
it's a
it.
lot. It's
this
a
is our
lot.
first ad hoc. I like this. So Tim,
Yeah.
uh we didn't get to do any. Do you have any on the spot? Do you have any shout outs?
I always have some shout outs. A couple of I do. There are people who reach out to us, Dave, all the time,
Okay.
who basically just want to say, hi, I'm listening to the podcast, or, thank you for the podcast, that sort
Yep.
of thing. And Sherry Carpenetto, I don't know if I've mentioned her before. She actually works in B2B health, and she's a listener, and I was very happy to hear that. She's a really great pal online, and so that was great. And also Liam Darmody, who is a LinkedIn guy that I've known for years now. He is a listener as well. So I've been very happy to hear from those folks, in addition to a lot of other folks I thanked in the past. So thanks for bringing that up, Isaiah.
They're probably complaining that we've been slacking on releasing
They were
episodes.
wondering. They said, "Wait a minute, there are a
Did you
couple
guys quit?
episodes."
We've had a little bit of a break, but we're back. We're
We're
back,
back.
and yeah, we have a lot of guests lined up. I think it'll be a really good Q4 in 2025 for the podcast. And yeah, we're excited to have Dave. So I'm not going to make Dave do an intro again.
That's fine.
He
I'm
already did
ready.
his
I'm ready
intro.
to go.
He's one of the more kind of prominent voices on LinkedIn and just online around, in the integration iPaaS space. We didn't really, we kind of glossed over it, but tell us, this is a good time. Tell us what Jitterbit is, what Jitterbit does, what an iPaaS is. A lot of people like these are like completely foreign concepts
Yeah.
for most people. So
Yeah, no,
go with
great question.
that.
I'll try and keep it under 30 seconds, but essentially what Jitterbit does is we have a platform, and in that platform we have four modules. One is an iPaaS module, which basically means you can connect disparate systems and data together, push things back and forth. We have an API manager, which allows the management of different APIs that businesses will serve up. We have an app builder, which is a low code, sort of no code application. Again, a little more enterprise in its nature, but an app builder product. And then we also, our module, I should say, and then our fourth one is an EDI module. So these are all entities that sit in the platform. And of course, with the right business that's scaling, all of these things make sense as they start to branch out, right? Like Isaiah, you and I were talking about just B2B and
So
retail.
complex. EDI. I mean, people forget like, I mean, I think a lot of what we're trying to do with B2B is just move to more sophisticated automation, get away from,
Mhm.
pen and paper and emailing orders. And there's a
Yep,
lot of error that happens in an email order because it's not obvious necessarily what's the SKU and the price, and it's
yep.
a standard, Excel document. And so I think it's actually pretty cool what you just mentioned because frankly, even sometimes I just lump you guys into iPaaS, but for a growing enterprise, company, you have iPaaS, but EDI really is like its own kind of beast. It's kind of like a legacy beast almost, but it's still
Yep.
like really important. And then you have the API management, which I know a lot of people like might use like Azure API management, but then they have that. They have like all these different systems, and it's like you
Yes.
guys. And then the app builder, I think, is really cool because Tim, I think we probably both agree that like these B2B companies, they try and cram everything into the ERP, or
Yep.
they try and cram everything into e-commerce,
Yep.
and then it's like it just becomes this like monstrosity and all these like custom apps. And my guess is with this app builder, you could probably build some kind of middleware layers, in the middle tools that, kind of make up for some of the shortcomings in some of these other. Is
That's
that probably,
exactly it.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like dashboards. It's
yeah,
access to, an example might be a company where a VP or a director is asking for some reporting, and the
on
person that needs,
sales, right? Like,
yeah,
show,
so they go and
yeah,
gather all this information, and it's like they're exporting spreadsheets from Salesforce and they're massaging this thing, and then it's like, okay, and here it is, right? And this, what I've seen our customers use App Builder for is that scenario where a director can just go in and look at the reporting, and it's pulling from all these different systems, but it's giving it to you in a really nice visual format, and it's real time. So yeah, so kind of interesting, but it's, I mean, again, a lot of fun. I think, like we mentioned, Tim, before you came on, the one thing I think that all of us enjoy is that it is different every day, and it is complicated. And um, you had a post I think earlier, Isaiah, in the week where you were talking about. It almost sounded like when businesses lay out their groundwork of systems and they either try to jam everything in the ERP or try to jam everything into the e-commerce platform.
usually one
And
of the two, right? It's like
you got to
mostly
kind
either
of
an
clean
ERP or
up, right?
commerce. And then they're like, why is it so expensive? It's like, well, because they're trying to make this thing do things that it was never designed to do.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could do that, but you're going to spend a fortune on custom development and then complain about it.
Well,
Yeah. So I'm sure like you guys must see a lot of this type of thing.
Yeah,
yep.
And then
every day.
to try and unwind it. I mean, how do you all sort of do that in a sensible, kind of cost effective
That's
way?
okay. So that's a great question, and we've been working on this, and something that Tim, I got to catch you up on. We're working on kind of like our B2B commerce vision,
Hmm.
and we think about it in many different respects, right? So there's marketing,
Yep.
but then you have, sales enablement, CPQ, CRM. So we
Yep.
really try and look at like all the functions of the business, right? And I mean, even if manufacturing, right? Like, and I think that what companies don't do a good job of is they just have all this software because they have it and they've been around for a while, and they just start bolting things on. And no one's like really, so we kind of want to take a step back and say, like, okay, what are the business processes you're trying to improve? Also, where's the business at, right? Like sometimes you can skip steps. You don't want to go. I mean, I had this conversation with like an $8 million manufacturer, and like it's that tough size, 8 million. It's like they might be almost too small for NetSuite, right?
Right. Right.
So they're kind of like, what do you do? Like they're on QuickBooks, but obviously that's not great. So you have these like tough kind of growing pains. So there's size of business, where the business is going, but also just the business processes. And Tim, you think a lot about this as well,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I mean, so Dave, one thing you may not be aware is I consult a lot, but I'm also working directly with investors into B2B and B2C companies. And so what happens is they say, Tim, go figure it out, or go take a
Right.
look and see what's going on over there and like what's happening, right? And I'm seeing like patterns, of course, and I think we all see certain patterns. Some businesses were like started, let's say, in the last decade, and if they've started relatively recently, they've often made really good decisions about tech and tools and how things
Yeah.
might work together. So that's one whole category of
That's
its own.
not the case of 99% of
No,
B2B.
no, that's it. That's it. But I just wanted to put that on the side because there are a few of those businesses where it's like, good for you. And then the other two categories I've been seeing a lot of are ones that had like a separate e-commerce effort. Like they set up a
I
separate,
hate that. I
right?
hate
A
it.
whole separate thing. It's like in the world over
Yeah,
there,
it's
and then
like,
maybe a
Yeah.
different building or a different
yeah.
city, or it's a whole other thing.
And they're
And
like, oh,
those
why doesn't
people,
it make any money? I wonder why, Tim.
yeah,
I wonder why
I
it
know,
makes
but
no
then
money.
oh my God. And we all have seen like what happens with that. So I don't have to outline this again, but that's a pattern, right? That we've seen a lot of businesses in. And then there are the others that, tried. Let's just give them like, a round of applause for
Yeah.
trying.
You
But
gotta
they
start.
got
You gotta try. You
yeah,
can't
they got
just
these legacy things, this new tech, the e-commerce, whatever. And I think that that's the vast majority of these B2B companies. And they're the ones that where like what you're talking about, Dave, what your company is doing, you're offering a solution particularly for them, right?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
really, really need to knit things together and take steps forward and knit more things together and to get ahead, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I had a really great discussion with his name's Paul DeForno.
Oh, we know, he's
yeah,
been on
he's
our
like probably
podcast. We
one of
love
our
Paul.
favorite guests.
Paul's,
Yeah.
Paul's a fantastic
We
guy,
love Paul,
very,
yeah.
very knowledgeable. And a year or two ago, I was having a chat with him, and we were just talking about sort of B2B and approaching a company where you want them to automate some of these things and digitize some of these things, right? And I remember these weren't his exact words, but he said something along the lines of, it really starts with the people that are part of the process. And if you don't get that buy-in from, say, the sales reps or the folks that are out on the road doing a lot of the relationship building, et cetera, it often falls flat on its face, right? Because they're not bought in. They don't believe it. They think they're maybe worried, right, that it's going to take a portion of their job away, et cetera, right? So it sounded to me like there was a lot of like education and alignment of compensation and whatnot with the company and with the folks that are going to be involved in the process, right? And I just thought that was really cool because we come in sort of after that, right? It's like,
Sure.
okay, I have these things, I have these endpoints, and are you able to put this stuff together, right? We're often not in the like the
Yeah, the
exploration
change
discovery
management.
stage, right?
Well,
Where
yeah, I
you,
mean, I think management is a huge problem, right? And Tim, I think you made a good point, which is like, if you treat it like this little kind of separate object, it's probably not going to be successful. It needs to be change management. It's part of the core DNA of the business.
Mhm.
And then I think we try and look at like, okay, what are the things that need to happen, right? Like sales isn't going to go away. I think that like when people think B2B commerce, it's like we're not saying like never have a sales rep or but your sales rep should become more efficient. They shouldn't be order takers. Like, are you paying this guy 100 grand, 200 grand to, place, have a customer give him a Excel file to place an order? Like that's a bad ROI, right? And so how do you automate some of that? And so he can go out and upsell, win bigger accounts. And then you
So,
start to map these things to different software, right? It's like, okay, you probably need a CRM. You probably need an e-commerce platform. You probably need an ERP. It actually, honestly, in some ways, isn't that complicated. What's complicated is dealing with all the people, all the departments,
Right.
the change management. And yeah, I mean, that's why I think Paul brings that up because that's the harder part. It's
Yeah.
like the systems are honestly not, I know Jitterbit's going to work. I mean, sometimes the legacy systems are a problem and that can be hard. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring up something that was in the news relatively recently that I had a conversation with a client about. You know, the strike that was very brief for the longshoremen's
Oh
union,
yeah, that was crazy.
and and they're like, okay, we worked out the salary piece over however many years, but we still have to talk about automation. And their concerns are real concerns. I mean, I want to just address that. But what's interesting is it ties in completely to what we're saying about the B2B world and what automations actually do and how they actually protect employees because
Mhm.
there's nothing like it's not like every automation means that it's not a robot is there replacing Tim and Isaiah and
Yeah.
Dave. That's not the case at all. It's just that you're doing different things, and as you said, Isaiah, it's more about efficiency. It's in these automation projects. So once people realize that, you're often just upgrading and becoming more productive and more efficient, more profitable, all these other things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to go super meta on this because I think
Let's
that
hear
I've thought about this. Like, I don't think that fighting automation is ever going to be a winning strategy. Like, especially now, like, I'll give you kind of a funny extreme example. Like, um, you know, once we're already too far down the path of automation, it's accelerating. You can fight it, maybe you can delay it, but like, do you want to fight it and delay it and then lose eventually and then be like obsolete? Like you're better off embracing it and being part of it, right? And evolving. And like the example I'll give you is like the most extreme example is the Unabomber. The Unabomber is like, the technology is going to get too crazy, and he's kind of right in some way. And our only solution is to where I disagree is his solution is horrible. he he was like a math genius and obviously had major mental issues and couldn't think of a better solution. But his solution was we got to go back to like living in huts and get rid of technology. Like that's not happening. Like
Wait, I have to give you a segue, and I'm gonna indulge
okay,
myself because you just brought something up, the Unabomber. All right, here's a personal connection. You ready? My husband is a professor, right? He's a cognitive scientist. His office was next to the office of David Galertner, whose office was blown up by the Unabomber.
oh my God.
So
Yeah,
when
'cause he was
my
going
husband was
after
a
scientists.
professor, yeah, when my husband was a professor at Yale, their offices were in these buildings next to each other when the Unabomber blew up David Galertner. So,
That's crazy.
it's amazing how these things like,
He was going after technology, right?
he's going after technologists.
High tech or whatever,
Hmm.
prestigious scientists. But
I'm sorry,
my
I had to
point
give you
is,
that
I
segue.
actually read his manifesto in college because I was like, this is, this guy's crazy enough to put it like, kind of want to see what he has to say. And he predicted a lot of what's kind of coming, right? AI and automation and robots taking over to some degree. And I think that there is some of that, right? But it doesn't have to be a dystopian, first of all. And
Oh,
two,
no,
it
no.
it also the Unabomber strategy is not great.
Yeah. Let's agree. Let's
And like
agree.
I'm giving
That's
you
not a
an
good.
extreme example, but like trying to
Yeah.
delay automation and even what the longshoremen are doing is a failing strategy. Like, yeah, you can, delay it, fight against it, but like another country's going to figure it out. China's automated their ports. Like
Yeah.
it's a losing battle that why do you want to be on the obvious losing side?
Automation can add jobs. I want to just throw that out there, and I've said this to clients before. It's like, don't be afraid of automation. Learn about automation and what it can do for you, right? Don't fear
But
it.
but I think you're right, Dave, was like a lot of these projects, people are scared they're going to lose their jobs. It's a lot of change management. So that is challenging. And one of the big things we talk about in our podcast is like, I think the ones that are successful is when the change management is coming from the CEO, there's executive buy-in. Where I think it always fails is like when the executives aren't really on board
Yeah.
and you have some rogue guy who's maybe really smart trying to figure it all out, but like he's going to get blocked on things. It's just never going to work, right? It needs
Yeah.
a company-wide, organization-wide, you
Yeah,
know.
I've kind of seen too. It's a really good point, right? Like when you're sort of trying to be the champ on your own, I've rarely seen that work, right? There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, right?
That's when you just get like one little thing, right? Like they
Yeah,
get Jitterbit, right? But then
yeah,
Jitterbit doesn't get fully adopted because, they're like, we need automation, and you get this guy who's, the champion, and but like if he doesn't have the full buy-in, you're not going to get, the app module, the EDI like they're going to leave EDI in their legacy thing, and then
yeah.
that's going to be staying, and so I mean,
Have you guys seen? And I've sort of seen this myself, and I think maybe because you guys are a little closer to the initial discovery. Um, what I have seen and heard from people is that in manufacturing specifically, where we do spend a lot of time, companies will look at the leader in that space, and they'll look at what decisions are they making? Are they doing this? Maybe even what tech stack are they selecting, right? And then they will follow because they know, okay, these are smart people. They're sort of leading in this space, and we're going to follow them, right? Do you guys sort of see that type of thing as well?
some of
Let
it.
me let me dive in first on this one. So I had a couple scenarios on this recently too, where it's not just the leaders, it's the competitors, right? So
Okay.
so where you'll get in a room and you're getting into the deep conversation, and then I have learned, I bring these examples in now. So I'll say, well, look, here are what three of your competitors have already done,
Got
or here's what the leader in the industry has already done,
it.
right? And so
That's pretty compelling, right? My competitor is doing this. Okay.
it really changes
Sit
the
up and listen,
conversation.
right?
They're like, "Oh, we didn't know that," or "Oh, wow," or "Oh, we, let's get hurry,"
Yep.
right? You know,
Yep. Okay. Okay.
There's definitely some of that, but I think some companies, they get too industry focused, which I think is a little bit of a mistake. They're like, well, because we manufacture, this very specific thing, we can only look at other manufacturers that it's like, well, what is Apple doing? I think it's good to look at other
I agree.
highly successful, highly profitable manufacturers. And I think Apple's actually a great example of arguably the most successful manufacturer, right? Maybe you could argue NVIDIA now, but let's just use Apple, right? And
Yeah.
they have a B2B commerce website program, which we subscribe, like we literally have like a B2B portal. It's separate from like apple.com, and we can log in and get our company discounts. And it's like, there's like
Oh,
automated.
that's cool.
So
Hmm.
they have the B2B Apple. They obviously have the consumer website, which is pretty obvious. They have their own stores.
Hmm.
They actually sell on marketplaces, but if you notice, they have a specific marketplace strategy where they only sell old models on
Yep.
Amazon. Have you seen that?
Yes,
Like,
I have.
yeah,
Oh,
you can get
that's
like a
interesting.
3-year-old model,
Mhm.
which is smart because what they're doing is they're like, look, we don't want to like not be on marketplaces, but we're only going to be on them very strategically. And I think they have deals in the Best Buy. I think they have like new models, but it's a little different. And there's like
Yeah.
they probably have a deal with them where they have to be displayed in the store.
Yep.
Then obviously they have their own stores. I'm sure they have mega B2B deals as well that are like
Yeah.
even beyond the little B2B portal.
But
So
it's like really well thought through,
they've
right?
got
Like,
a pretty diversified mix of channels and marketing and go to market, and they have B2B sales reps, and then they have, so that, but I think, if you're a manufacturer, especially if you can, this isn't like an impossible scenario. You could have like a much simpler version of some of this,
yeah.
with relative, like with a Jitterbit, with a BigCommerce, a Shopify,
Yeah.
Magento, a NetSuite. Like we're not, this stuff can all be done for like relatively okay amount of, like it's not going to be free, but
Yeah.
the price to do all this is not as crazy as it was.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Do you find that in your space, you're educating. There's a lot of education that has to
Yes.
happen.
It's tough, right? Because we don't really get paid for that, right? Like we're not
Right.
like getting paid to like do, I mean, we get paid a little bit for training, but it's negligible. So I think one of the biggest challenges, like that's part of why we're doing this podcast, right? It promotes ourselves a little bit. And it's like,
Yeah.
if the market was 3 years ahead of where it is now, we'd be making more money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of like speed up the market and educate the market because, yeah, a lot of it's education, just lack of awareness, and lack of a strategy, right? And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of education, and I think a lot of people don't even know that these tools can do what they can do. And I think a lot of the technology is there. I mean, good example is we're talking to we're likely going to be implementing a project on BigCommerce, and they didn't even know, they have a mostly B2C business, but they had not brought up the B2B side of the business, and then they brought it up, and we're like, oh, BigCommerce has B2B edition. They're investing a ton of, it's probably like the crown jewel of their business. It's
Yeah.
they're putting all their money, and it's like it's getting better. And they're like, oh, like they didn't even know it existed. It's just a good example of like they were already about to buy a software and didn't even know that it had B2B edition or what B2B
Right.
edition did, right?
Yeah.
Part of
Yeah.
that is because we were focused on the B2C side, but it's just a lot of it is like probably with like 10 really good software, which sounds like a lot, but it's not that crazy, like a NetSuite, a BigCommerce B2B edition, a Jitterbit, whatever, maybe a HubSpot like probably 10 of these solutions stitched together with, I know I keep plugging you Jitterbit, you could have a very sophisticated, modern enterprise B2B, B2C tech stack.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's the problem is no one wants to actually go through the pain of doing all this.
Right. Right.
Because
Yeah.
you have to rip things out, right? You have to do some heart surgery in some cases, there, yeah.
You know
Have you,
what?
have you, oh,
Oh,
sorry, Tim, go
I was
ahead.
just going to add just a little bit. I mean, one of the things that I find kind of interesting too is how far behind just education is in e-commerce at all,
I
right?
know.
And Isaiah has heard this before, and so have our listeners. But I'm involved in a couple different academic programs where they're developing certificate and degree programs related to e-commerce in particular.
Smart.
And because you can't currently really get a degree in e-commerce, right? That's
Yeah.
something that's a little unusual in a way, given how, far we've come. But that'll change very soon. But
Yeah.
even in those programs, it's
We're gonna
very,
be so behind, right? Like
yeah, it's so behind. I mean,
our
I
podcast is
guess
probably
lecture
ahead
and
of the lectures, right? Like so,
oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
so
the places I've guest lectured really don't, like the students are great, but they still don't understand really B2B commerce because they haven't had the opportunity to learn
yeah,
about
they're
B2B.
still
Yeah.
learning like the basics of Shopify, right? And it's like,
Yep,
yeah, and
that's it.
so yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a good point. I think that e-commerce is still pretty nebulous to a lot of people. Like one of the biggest parts of e-commerce is logistics. No one thinks about logistics. It's super complicated. Like the more I learn about logistics, the more I learn about how complicated it is. And
Yeah.
like freight and LTL is like way behind. You can't get real-time rates easily. Like all this stuff is super complicated.
Yeah.
Right? Then you
Yeah.
think about
And so
international.
important, right? Like
Yeah.
you could do the whole front part of the process for your customer really, really well. And then if the logistics are a mess, I mean, for me, when the whole front end is smooth and then it gets clunky, no tracking number, you don't really know where it is,
Yeah.
it's not going to come for a week or two. I typically don't buy again, like depending on what it is.
Yeah, and that's the problem is those companies aren't tracking the value of that. So they never invest in logistics because, oh, the customer can't see logistics. So how do we know it's going to increase retention? How do we know it's going to, like you just mentioned, like they're losing customers, but they don't know it because I don't know. How do you figure that out? You got to talk to your customers. You got to, and so,
Well,
yeah.
the logistics thing that happened recently with a client where it turned out there was no way for their customers to report damaged goods without like calling a sales rep or something. Like the goods
Okay.
arrived and they're damaged. You couldn't just like click on the order and report
I
damage.
love like the Uber Eats where you know how like it's like, oh, my order is wrong, and like they'll like
Yep,
instantly refund you. Like that's a good example of something they would need, right? And
Yeah.
I
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's
Not having that, Tim, I think is a great point. Like, okay, this thing showed up. So you're a little, not maybe not upset, depends on what it is, but it's like, oh, this is incorrect. Okay.
Mhm.
When the unwinding of that, which was not your fault to begin with, right? You ordered it correctly, but you got the wrong thing.
Yep.
I think when that's hard or that's difficult and it's on the customer to try and figure it out, like call a sales rep, you know, for me, I probably would send the thing back or maybe not, and just
Oh,
be
I'm
looking to
with
buy.
you. I
I
mean,
will find somebody else to buy this from where that, and then
Yeah.
the same is true where if that process is really great, and I think Amazon has done a great job of this again, like if it's wrong, or sometimes it gets sent to the incorrect house here in our court, and it's like you can just easily fix things. It's awesome, and it's all you don't have to talk to anybody. It's all
Well,
just
that's why I think that people really underestimate why e-commerce is so hard because, oh, it's like buy Shopify, and Shopify is a great software. Don't get me wrong, right? They're by far clearly the most successful e-commerce platform, but they failed at logistics. Like they tried to buy, what was that company? Logistics is so hard, they failed
oh,
at.
I know
They
you
had to
mean.
sell the company. They've continuously failed at logistics, and that's why like people just spin up a Shopify site. It's easy on the front end, but then the back end is useless in the sense that, hey, how are you going to ship this thing out?
yeah,
Like, are you going
yeah.
to inventory it? You need a 3PL? It's just the whole
I
logistics.
have noticed here, like, and I'm in a smaller town, like maybe I'll say like 50 minutes, like 50 out of Toronto to the west. But even here, there in the last, I'll say 2 years, there's been three like massive Amazon warehouses that have gone up, and these things they are enormous. But
Yep.
I have also noticed that when I order something, I was telling you, Isaiah, like I get a window now, like it will be here today from 1:30 to 3:30. I get things usually next day where that was not happening in previous years. So, but to set all of that up, obviously very expensive, and yeah, these are big, big
Usually you
buildings.
need a really good 3PL to have that level of, a company that specializes in logistics and they get your stuff out, across all these warehouses. But then you got to get it to them and they'd have to
Yeah,
store it in multiple different warehouses, which gets, it's complicated, right? And so, and then a lot of guys will have only one warehouse, but if you're in the East Coast and you try to ship to California, it's either really expensive or really slow, and then you're not competitive in the West Coast, and it's like people just
yeah,
they just assume that, oh, I have a little nice shiny front end. I always front end's the easy part.
yeah,
The
yeah, yeah,
front
yeah.
end is so easy. Like we can, do that in our sleep at this point at Trellis. It's making everything work. Like you said, all those systems. How do we think about all these systems come together?
Yeah.
That's the hard part.
Well, one of the things that I really do like with some B2B companies right now is offering pickup as an option, right? Pickup and where and when, or telling you items within an order, like within an order
Uh,
that some are same day available, some can be whatever. Do you want to split your shipments so you can get the things same day and have
Split
those
shipment's another example of not a simple thing to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not, but when that ability is there, it's just like, I hear the angels singing because
And
it's
Dave,
really
did you
just a
get to
beautiful thing.
choose? Did you get to choose the split shipment? Like, how did that work?
Yes. Yes. So what happened is it said, we'd like to let you know that let's say there were 10 items in the order, I forget. These three items are available to do X. You could pick them up, you could have them same day. The other seven will be in,
Which
3 days or
what?
whatever. Do you want to split? And you hit a button that says split, and then they go into different orders.
That's amazing. Which business was this?
This was a business selling parts that are mostly plumbing related parts.
Okay, so this is a B2B commerce site
It's a
then.
B2B commerce.
Wow. Do you know, are
That's
you allowed to
cool.
say what platform, or do you know how they did this?
They were actually using Salesforce Commerce,
Oh,
and they were
wow.
looking to move away from it, but because they had all these things that were custom built.
Yeah. But that's the thing is like people think that's easy. It's like they probably spent a lot of money to get there, right?
They
And so
did. They spent a lot of money. They spent a lot of money, but they're basically saying, what is it that every single customer asks for? And they kept doing every single thing as a special project. And, you understand that's a huge, huge thing.
yeah, they're sort of over customizing for,
oh,
for,
yeah.
for every customer, but
But I did like that. I have to say, I thought that that's a takeaway for me. Like I
they,
put
they,
it on my list.
they were at least listening to their customers. So that's good.
They were listening, and I'd like to see that be easier. That's kind of where I go with a lot of these things that I pick up from the companies that I work with. It's like, you know what? That's interesting. Maybe it's too complicated because of the way they had to get there. However, I like it, right? I like
As an
the
end
idea of it.
user, it was a
Yeah.
nice option,
Yeah.
right? Do
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys find at Trellis, do people come to you and you sort of go and get all of the information? Like if they come to you and say, listen, we need this, do you guys do kind of soup to nuts, like front end all the way
Yeah,
through
we
to,
have to figure out a lot. I mean, most of the questions I have, they can't even answer on the first call. What's your
right,
ERP system? What version is it? Like, if it's not NetSuite, it's,
Profit
Microsoft
21 or something?
Division, 12.3 with, a good example is just QuickBooks. They're like, oh, we have QuickBooks. I'm like, QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise. Because
Yeah, yeah,
they're like,
yeah.
oh, the integration works. No, it only works for QuickBooks Online. The Desktop Enterprise is a completely different integration, or at least if you want to use like the cheap web, the WebGility type thing that's like more,
Yeah,
this is more like low end stuff, right? Like, yeah, I mean, we have a whole engagement guide in the sales process. What's tricky and we're always struggling with is like, how much do we do for free? When does it become like
right.
paid discovery? And
Yeah,
it's a really
that's
hard balance. And frankly, like, we've gotten a lot better at paid discovery. Now we're kind of going back and we're saying, do we do some more of this for free in sales, but be a little more strict on who we do it for, eat
yeah,
that cost, but then we win, the deal fast. Like it's hard, man. It's
the
really hard,
balancing.
and people don't really get it how much help they need. And yeah, it's like building a house, but they don't understand what a house is, how a house is made. Like they don't even understand what the foundation is.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
People understand how,
Lots of education,
yeah,
right? And that takes time.
yeah, yeah. So it's hard. But yeah, we really are like I think much more consultants of like the full tech stack because we have to because we realize that like it's all these systems that like probably our average customer and when you look at like even just like a Shopify site, they have in some cases 40, 50 apps,
Yep.
Yeah.
you know. And so they have a search app, they have ERP, they have middleware like you guys. And so this
Yep.
stuff adds up really fast. And so it's not e-commerce. So going back to your point, Tim, it's like e-commerce is the whole business, right? It's logistics, it's
Sure.
customer service, it's sales, it's marketing. It's just, and we've talked about this. We're trying to get rid of E and just say commerce because it's
It's
all
commerce then.
it's
It's just
digital
Yeah.
commerce.
commerce, right? And so, you know,
Yeah, like you said, it's not its own thing in the corner with an E on it. It's all of your
It
goods
was
and
when I started 25 years ago.
yeah,
Now it's not. Now it's
yeah,
not at
I
all.
think I think what makes it so much more difficult is that people can wrap their heads around the simplicity of I have a store or I have a warehouse, I have products, and I people come here and we give it to them.
Yeah.
Once you start getting into like they buy online, we have to take this order, it gets routed to the correct warehouse. It's this super complicated kind of like omni-channel, thing that you have to figure out between logistics and online ordering and people have
yeah.
a hard time wrapping their heads around all the things that are actually happening. They just see a thing on the front end. They don't realize this order might be going through 10 systems.
Yeah, it was interesting like COVID, I think really highlighted a lot of the bottlenecks and challenges, right? And
Yeah.
I have an example. There was actually a company, it was a customer of ours, and they sold rain barrels and those types of like very specific product. It might have even been just like sort of rain barrels and that type of product, right? And so COVID hits. The way they were selling prior was they would do a sale, and then they would say, okay, come to the warehouse Friday night, Saturday, Sunday on this weekend, and we will have all of the products out, and you can walk through the warehouse and you can buy your things. They had a catalog, but you would call in. There was no real online thing. Then they were forced during COVID they could not do that. And so I was speaking with a lady. We actually took her out for lunch about a year ago, and I said, how was business? And she said, it's great. But she said, man, it was like really good pain. But she said it was painful. She's like, they put up a site, they put up a Shopify site. She said we did our first sale, and because everybody was at home and they were sort of working on their houses, she said we got every day. She's like, we would get 200 to 400 orders of rain barrels. But she's like, we were used to having maybe like on a good day like 80, right, would be a great day. So she's like,
Wow.
he would come in the morning, and she said there would just be a list of orders. And she was like, we were doing everything manually. We had to get it all into NetSuite manually. So they just had this. She said it was a real problem. They had to like get all the warehouse folks, all the office folks. They had to call in temporary help to
Sure.
just make sure they could service these orders, right? And so it's a really great story because they sold a lot, but it was also like it really highlighted the pain of like not having things automated, et
Basic
cetera, et
logistics,
cetera,
right? And
right?
that's not even that like, that's still a relatively basic scenario. And people just forget
Yeah,
how, this stuff can get fairly complicated. Do
like
you have
quick,
any,
right? In a
yeah.
basic scenario, it can get complicated
Do you have any
really.
good, B2B, manufacturing distributor stories of someone that maybe came to you guys, started kind of fairly basic, and now they're using the iPaaS, the EDI, the app builder, and like you're like, wow, these guys are like really getting it. And like, is there a story like that that you?
Yeah, there's actually a customer of ours that and they've been with us for a long time, probably pushing 10 years. And they sell backpacks, a lot of outdoor gear. And they when they when they originally came to us, they were selling in, I think, two stores. It was like a Bass Pro and like Cabela's or something. And then they had a wee little online presence. And you fast forward a decade, they have probably one of the largest online presences. They're in, I think they have 70 trading partners with us, like 70. So they are in many, many stores in North America. Of course, that brings all sorts of complexity in reporting. So they're also on Amazon. They sell on a bunch of different marketplaces. So they were like really leaning into our customers want to buy this wherever they are, and we're allowing them to do that. And so that specific customer is a really great story of like they use basically all of the entities that we have in our platform, right? And the app builder one that has the ability to report easily, they want to be able to go in, their VPs want to look and go, okay, overall, how are our sales? And then they want to drill down. So how is it on Amazon? How is it at Cabela's? How is it, right? And they have the ability to do that. So that is one that kind of just comes top of
And it,
mind.
it sounds like they adopted this multi-channel, vision, and then they brought all the systems together with your, kind of integration capabilities, and that's what, and that's it sounds like obvious, but companies just struggle with this. And I think I'll give you a good example, Tim. I think you probably know this better than I do. Is I think, especially in manufacturing, but also in distribution, is like they're like almost like scared and too far removed from their actual customers. Like, so whatever, you make widget A and they've been selling to the dealerships for 100 years. And so they're more, they care more about the dealership. They're so scared to lose the deal with the dealer. The dealer, it's like they're in this like awkward tension between their whatever, their B2B customers or something, and they'll do anything to please, like I knew this manufacturer that like they'll do anything for Home Depot, but it's like Home Depot is not your customer. Your customer are the people going to Home Depot. And it's like they're so far removed from the actual customers using the product. And I think it's a big mistake for a lot of these companies. And they're so scared to upset Home Depot or whoever it was,
Yeah.
wouldn't go direct or like, you know what I mean? And I just don't think that's the way to do business in the going forward.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of businesses that are like that, and I'm glad to say though, I think even over the last 4 or 5 years, there are fewer of them, right? I think that more and more have decided that they do have to get in touch with the customer and talk with them directly, or work on their direct to consumer piece of their business to understand how to inform all the other aspects of their business. So, yeah, some people have gotten a little bit better on that, but it's still true. I mean, there are so
Yeah.
many people who have that kind of fear because they were so removed. There was a laundry business I had talked to that did like hotel laundry, I mean, same kind of thing. Like they didn't understand that, like it sounds funny in a way, but just like they only thought about the hotel. They didn't think about the guests at the hotel and what they
It's
thought of
actually
the
using
luggage.
the product, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we don't. People don't use our product. The hotel uses our product. It's like,
Yeah, it's a weird cycle you get your mind into. You think
Yeah.
that's the
We got
way
to
it
keep the
is.
Marriott happy. Well, yes, but they'll be happy when their customers are
what
happy.
happens when
Right?
Marriott goes, you know what? I'm just going to start buying this direct from China and putting Marriott on my Marriott logo on it.
I mean,
Nice,
I'll give
you know?
credit to one company that was very smart at this. So there's an LED company that I was involved with. I was their head of e-commerce for a while and had a lot of fun with them. And they were manufacturers and they had this huge B2B business and they had a small B2C business, but they were very smart in taking B2C, data and looping it back in, or the engineers actually meeting with like reviewing focus group data like from people about like what they thought of the lighting. And they were really good at that. And very few places were, but more are, So I'm glad to
Right.
see that come.
Dave, I want to respect your 1 p.m. Can we give you, what advice do you have, for people wherever they're at in the B2B journey? And a lot of people listening to this are either new, some of them are super senior, it's a huge range, but yeah.
Yeah. I think what I have found works really well, and that's what I love about Trellis, Jitterbit, and just the ecosystem is if you go to the right folks in the ecosystem, you're going to get good answers. And if you're able to, if these are execs that are looking or folks that are looking for solutions, I have always found events, whether it's an intimate dinner or a luncheon or something that's happening in one of the major cities or a major trade show, I have always found really great discussions there because it's like you can go to a happy hour, which those are fun, but you will also, if you go to the right ones, you can sit with kind of your peers or even competitors and you can ask some really great questions or even go to great sessions where you can start to understand like here's what people in the industry are doing, right? And I think these relationships are just so important, right? Like you said, it's complicated, it's people, and I have found a lot of the people we've deployed and had success with, it typically has started there, right? So with partners,
I
right?
agree. I also think like, look, reach out to Dave or Tim or myself. Like most of the time, if you're a B2B business, we want to talk to you. Like I think
Sure.
people think like unless they're like immediately ready to buy, we're not going to talk to them. But it's like,
Yeah,
if you're a legitimate business, we'll talk to you.
yeah,
Maybe we're not going to work together for 2 years, but like,
yeah. And that's okay, right?
yeah, that's okay.
Yeah,
I think people don't realize how long the sales cycle is for us. So like, we're always like excited to have those conversations. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
Because I mean,
But I would say that's probably that's just, there's many things, but I would say that's one thing that kind of comes to
I
mind.
really agree with you. I mean, companies also do things called lunch and learns,
Yeah,
which I supported, big time, where they just, have somebody like us
yep,
talking for a half hour during a lunch, and it's an open meeting, and anyone can come in and hear,
yep,
talk about, ask questions. It's great.
yeah.
well,
That's wonderful.
this was awesome. Honestly, I feel like we need to have you back because I knew this was
I
going to
think
happen.
so
I feel
too.
like we didn't even go that deep into the integration weeds, and honestly, we may have to
Hey,
do that.
I'm
In
up for a part two
yeah,
anytime.
it's hard to cover everything, right? Because you start to go down the change management rabbit hole. That's a whole
Yeah,
hour, and then we're
That's a
like,
whole
yeah,
thing. Yep.
you still got to
yeah.
build the integrations after that, right?
We
And
could
so,
build a season of episodes out of
yeah,
this if you
Well,
want.
I'm glad I was able to join today. This is great.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm
great meeting
still
you, Tim.
learning after 129 episodes. I'm still, yeah.
Thanks so much, guys.
All
Thanks,
right,
Isaiah.
thanks.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
weekend.
Thanks.
See ya.